Hello humans, Master Dinnerflex here, bringing you the low quality content you deserve, and today we are going to discuss Sky Striker Mobilize, Engage with an exclamation mark. So, a lot of people are already on the train like, why did they bring this back? Why did they bring this back? I can't believe they brought this back. Sky Strikers are going to be broken, and I want to give you my thoughts on what I guess we need to do some history first. So around 2019, back when Engage was still at 3, but like Widow Anchor was at 1, effectively Orca Sky Striker format, I just flat out said Engage just needs to be banned. There isn't going to be a world where Engage is fine if you just keep hitting the cards around it. It's just not going to work. Because that's effectively what they were doing. They limited drones. They limited Widow Anchor. Which, to me, is evidence... Limiting Widow Anchor, to me, is just evidence that they wanted Engage to be used in every single deck ever. Because limiting Widow Anchor means Sky Striker on its own just doesn't stand much of a chance. It needs a supplement. It needs, like, a secondary engine. And... man, if you needed a deck that was very good at being splashed into other decks, look no further than Sky Striker because of this dumb fucking spell. But that's what I want to get into. I wanted this card banned, and it had nothing to do with Sky Strikers. It will never have anything to do with the pure Sky Striker deck. I hate to break it to you. The reason I wanted this card banned is because... as long as it was legal, people were just going to use it in any deck, including Sky Striker. Now, you might be thinking, well, if you don't want it to be so generic, then you should just ban Hornet drones. And I gotta tell you, that argument stopped being the case in 2019 before this card got banned. Because that argument was valid in 2018, the year this came out, because now, like, the battle phase got... Goki needed the 3 extenders, so when you cut off 3 Engage, 3 drones, that really hurt it. And in Trickstar, that deck needed as many monsters as possible, so hitting Hornet drones to run also hurt it. But, here's the thing. That was only because of the pace of the game. That one Hornet drones seemed almost like alleviated the damage it was doing. But that actually wasn't the case when we go to 2019. Because Orca Sky Striker came around. And that deck would, in many cases, activate Engage, not give a shit about this card, and search another card and then draw a card. And only were really searching this when they needed the extender, or they started off with 3 spells engraved. So they can just engage, draw, search this, and then Kugari it back and get another trap and search this and draw. That's the issue I have with Hornet drones, is that Hornet drones, like, even if you ban it, let's just completely ban it. Now... oh man, I can't... now no one in their right mind would ever play Engage anymore except in Sky Strikers. Except when you consider the fact that these cards exist. Widow Anchor, which is just a Forbidden Chalice that when you have enough spells engraved can just mind control the card. And in Shark Cannon, which is a very relevant effect to banish something out of the graveyard, or when the spells are loaded up, you just take it as an extender. These 2 cards, at this point, have invalidated the Hornet drones idea. These effects, they're just so powerful. And nothing on this says you need to control a Sky Striker, or that you need to have Sky Strikers in your graveyard. The only thing that matters is you have empty main monster zones. That's not hard. As a matter of fact, if you're using these aggressively, you probably haven't even committed to the board yet. So that argument, at this point, is completely invalid. So having 3 engage and no Hornet Drone doesn't solve anything about the problems of this card. I've just erased Hornet Drones from this discussion at this point because that's just my opinion of it. It could be banned or have never existed, and the problems with this card would still persist. So if your argument about this being generic is going to fall over as soon as you realize people could just search other things besides Hornet Drones, then where does this discussion lead us? Well, this card is at 1. The difference between this card at 1 and this card at 3 is very interesting to me, because I only ever wanted this card banned off the idea that they need to make sure that no deck besides Sky Strikers has access to this, or this card just needs to not exist. So their first banning of this card meant that they just don't want this to exist right now, or when they banned it back in 2019, or 2020 I should say. But now it's at 1. And not only is it at 1, but Kagari's at 3. And I think that is actually super fascinating to me. Because Kagari at 3 and Engage at 1 is probably the only universe where Engage is effectively at 3+ copies per deck, exclusively to Sky Strikers. Now you might be asking, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is the only deck that's going to use this as many times as possible is Sky Strikers. A normal Joe Blow deck can't activate Engage, draw a card, and then activate another Engage anymore. That's pretty much only for Sky Strikers now. Which, at that point, kind of undoes the issue I had with this card, is that it stopped being a Sky Striker card over time and just became pot of greed for any deck that wanted to play a bunch of spell cards. Spell cards, the easiest cards in the game to activate. Like, obviously, it at 3 is just not possible. It at 2 probably isn't even possible ever again. But it at 1 is probably the only way they can test this card, and it only truly work for Sky Striker. Now, here's the crazy thing. Hornet Drones. You could still play this as just a supplementary engine in another deck. Like, that's actually very possible. But when you get to that, you're going to realize that Hornet Drones isn't the end-all be-all card that makes this broken. It never was. Hornet Drones was just a little out of place for the archetype, and Engage is completely out of place for card design. So I want to show you what I mean by that. So if you take Hornet Drones and you're 1 Engage, you're 2 copies of Hornet Drones per deck. And you're like, oh, this is so broken, because it can just make any Link 2 in the game. Well, the only really unfair Link 2 that's generic right now is Verte Anaconda. And I want to show you how you make Verte Anaconda. Let's say you engage Search Hornet Drones, draw a card in some universe where you started with that. You'll make Kagari to grab back Engage or Hornet Drones. Actually, Hornet Drones. Otherwise, you can't do it. So you grab back Hornet Drones. Then you have to link Kagari into Hayate. And then you got to activate Hornet Drones again and turn the token into another Link 1. And then you can make Verte. You have to devote 3 extra deck slots to a 2-of. So that argument right now is invalid. So it only will really get valid when we get some generic Link that is so absolutely busted that Hornet Drones isn't really the problem. It just shows you the problem. Because if we have a Link 2 that is so powerful, you'll devote 3 extra deck slots just for a 2-of. That's its own issue. That is its own issue. So that argument isn't valid. The point I want to get across is, I was one of the first people that said Engage should just be banned. Quit banning the cards around it, because Pot of Greed is never going to be fair unless it cannot be activated at all. So unless you ban literally every Sky Striker card in the game, Engage is going to have a broken effect. There's no way around it. And the thing is, this is an interesting way to test Engage. Because if Engage is coming back, and they want to support Sky Strikers for whatever reason, like they are, this is the only route you can take to where Sky Strikers are the #1 way to access Engage, and not just any deck ever. And if this is too powerful, they might limit Kagari or just keep Engage banned till the end of time. There's no telling. But I also want to say that if you want to judge how broken Engage is, don't judge how broken Engage is based on the performance of Sky Strikers. That's actually the worst way to judge the power level of Engage. Judge the power level of Engage by how many decks play Engage that are not Sky Strikers. That's how you know. That's how you know this card is powerful, when a deck unrelated to Sky Strikers, and maybe even a different playstyle altogether, is playing Engage. That's how you know this card needs to be hit again. And that's just kind of the point I want to get across, is Engage was never broken because of Sky Strikers. It was broken because it's broken. And there's no undoing that. The only way you can allow it to exist is to allow it to exist in the least amount possible. And this is their way of testing if this card can come back. But that's about it. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and hopefully you learned something, because literally stop caring about Sky Strikers when it comes to Engage, because that's not the issue that Engage was causing. It wasn't about Sky Strikers. It was about this just being thrown in literally everything. That's the true issue with Engage. Hornet drones being banned doesn't fix that problem. It might help it for a while, but it will not fix that issue. But yep, that's about it. Thank you all for watching, and remember, Master Dinnerflex will take your soul.